Rain had stopped an hour ago, but water still dripped from the tall trees of Seven. Park wiped his hands on an old cloth and looked at the engine he had just finished repairing. It belonged to a trading ship from the outer colonies. Simple work, good pay, another quiet day at his small repair shop on the edge of the settlement. Had lived on this forested planet for 6 years now. He came here after leaving Earth, looking for a place where he could work with his hands and forget about the busy life he left behind. Seven was perfect for that. It was a neutral refueling station, far from the big political games of the galaxy. Ships came, ships left, and fixed whatever needed fixing. He was about to close his shop for the night when his communication device started making noise. The screen showed an unknown signal. Press the button to answer. A voice came through. It was high and shaking with fear. The speaker was clearly not human. Recognized the accent as one of the many alien species that passed through the planet. "Human mechanic," the voice said quickly. "We need help. A ship has crashed in the deep forest. Section 47, please come now." Frowned. Section 47 was far from the settlement. The forest there was thick and dangerous. Wild creatures lived in those parts, and the terrain was rough. "What kind of ship?" asked. "How bad is the damage?" There was silence for a moment. Then the voice spoke again, more quietly this time. "We cannot say. Please just come. We will pay whatever you ask." That was strange. Most customers gave him details about their problems right away, but the fear in that voice was real. Had heard many voices over the years, and he knew when someone was truly scared. "I will be there in 2 hours," he said. Packed his tools into his old transport vehicle. He grabbed extra parts, medical supplies, and food. If the crash was serious, he might need to stay there for a while. He also took his emergency light and a small weapon for protection against the forest animals. The drive into the deep forest was slow and difficult. The trees grew close together, and their roots made the ground uneven. His vehicle shook and bounced as he moved forward. The sky above was hidden by thick leaves, and only small bits of light came through. After almost 2 hours, his scanner detected metal ahead. A lot of metal. Whatever had crashed was not a small ship. Slowed down as he got closer. Through the trees, he saw the shape of a vessel. It was large, much larger than the trading ships he usually worked on. The hull was dark silver, and even though it was badly damaged, it still looked beautiful and expensive. Then he saw the guards. There were at least 10 of them standing around the crash site. They wore armor that recognized as military design. Their weapons were pointed at the trees, watching for any danger. When they saw his vehicle approaching, several of them aimed at him. Stopped his vehicle and raised his hand slowly. He got out carefully, showing that he was not a threat. "I am the mechanic," he called out. "Someone called me for help." A tall stepped forward. She had marks on her armor that showed high rank. Her skin was pale blue and her eyes were a deep purple color. She looked at with a mixture of relief and something else. Was it shame? "I am Commander Taylor," she said. "You are the human who repairs ships." "Yes, Park, what happened here?" Commander Taylor looked back at the crashed vessel. Her face was tight with worry. "Our ship went down. The engines failed without warning. We managed to land, but the damage is severe." Walked closer to examine the ship. As he got near, he noticed something on the hull, a symbol. It was carved in gold and even covered in dirt and scratches. It was unmistakable. The imperial seal of the Empire. His heart beat faster. This was not an ordinary ship. This was a vessel of the royal fleet. Only the most important members of the Empire traveled in ships marked like this. He did not say anything about what he noticed. Instead, he continued his examination. The damage was extensive. The left engine was completely destroyed. The right one was barely holding together. There were holes in the hull where something had torn through the metal. "This does not look like engine failure," said quietly. "This looks like weapon damage." Commander Taylai's eyes widened for just a moment. Then her face became hard again. Can you fix it or not, human? Ignored the cold tone in her voice. He had dealt with before. They were proud people who believed their species was superior to most others in the galaxy. Humans, in their view, were young and primitive, not worth much respect. I need to see inside, said. The hull damage is bad, but the real problem will be in the internal systems. Commander Taylai's hesitated. She looked back at her soldiers, then at the ship. Something was making her nervous, more nervous than just a crash would explain. Very well, she finally said, but you will only go where I allow, understood? Nodded and gathered his tools. As he walked toward the ship's entrance, he heard something. A weak voice coming from inside the damaged vessel. It was calling out in language. The words were hard to hear, but the tone was clear. Someone was in pain. Someone was trapped. Looked at Commander Taylai's. There is still someone inside. The commander's face became even more worried. Yes, our most important passenger. Our own engineers tried to free him, but they cannot work in this planet's atmosphere for long. Their bodies reject the air here. That is why we called for outside help. Understood now. They had no choice. Their biology made it impossible for them to work effectively in Seven's environment. They needed someone who could breathe freely and work without problems. They needed a human. Then we should not waste time talking, said. He moved quickly toward the ship's entrance, his tools ready. Behind him, Commander Taylai's whispered to one of her soldiers. If he discovers who is inside, make sure he understands the importance of silence. Heard her words but pretended he did not. He was already focused on the job ahead. Whatever important person was trapped inside that ship, they needed help now. Politics and pride could wait. The entrance to the ship was bent and damaged, but managed to squeeze through. Inside, the air smelled of burned wires and leaking fuel. Emergency lights flickered red, casting strange shadows on the walls. And somewhere deeper in the ship, that weak voice called out again, waiting for rescue. The inside of the ship was worse than expected. Cables hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Panels had fallen from the walls, showing the damaged systems underneath. The floor was covered with broken glass and pieces of metal. Moved carefully through the dark corridor. His light cut through the shadows, showing more destruction with each step. Whatever hit this ship had hit it hard. Commander Taylai's followed close behind him. Her breathing was already becoming difficult. Even though she tried to hide it, could see that the planet's air was affecting her. Her movements were slower, and her pale blue skin was turning slightly gray. You should go back outside, said. I can work faster alone. I cannot leave you unsupervised inside this vessel, she replied firmly. But her voice was weaker than before. Did not argue. He continued forward, following the sound of that weak voice. It was coming from the center of the ship, probably the main chamber. The door to the central room was stuck. Pulled out his tools and started working on the lock mechanism. It took him several minutes, but finally the door slid open with a grinding sound. What he saw inside made him stop. The room was clearly meant for someone important. Even damaged, it showed signs of great wealth. The walls had beautiful carvings. The furniture, now broken and scattered, was made from expensive materials. And in the center of the room, trapped under a fallen beam, was unlike any had seen before. This was older. His skin was a deeper blue than Taylai's, almost like the night sky. He wore robes of gold and silver, now torn and dirty. But what caught attention most was the crown. It was small and simple, but it sat on this head like it belonged there naturally. Had never seen the emperor of the empire before, but he knew, without any doubt, that he was looking at him now. Finally, the emperor spoke. His voice was weak but still carried authority. I was beginning to think my guards had forgotten about me. Emperor, Commander Taylai said, rushing forward despite her difficulty breathing. We called for help. This human is a mechanic. He will free you." Emperor's purple eyes turned to look at. There was surprise in them and something else, something like disgust. "A human," the Emperor said slowly. "You brought a human to help me. Have we fallen so low?" Felt the insult, but he did not let it show on his face. He had heard worse from other aliens over the years. He simply walked forward and began examining the beam that trapped the Emperor. "The beam is heavy," said, ignoring the Emperor's words. "But it is not resting directly on you. There is a small gap. If I can lift it just a little more, you can slide out." "Did you hear what I said, human?" Emperor demanded. "Do you not know who I am?" Looked directly at the Emperor. "I know who you are. You are someone who needs help. That is all that matters right now." The Emperor seemed shocked by the simple answer. He opened his mouth to say something else, but was already working. The beam was made of strong metal, could not lift it with his own strength. He looked around the room for something to use. His eyes found a piece of broken machinery nearby. It had a hydraulic arm that was still partially working. Pulled the machinery closer and connected it to his own power pack. The hydraulic arm came to life with a low sound. He positioned it under the beam and activated the lift function. Slowly, the beam began to rise. The Emperor grunted in pain as the pressure on his legs decreased. "Now slide out," ordered, "quickly before the arm fails." Emperor was not used to taking orders from anyone, especially not from a human. But survival was more important than pride. He pushed himself backward, moving out from under the beam just as the hydraulic arm gave a final cry and stopped working. The beam fell back down with a loud crash. Knelt beside the Emperor and examined his injuries. Both legs were badly bruised and one might be broken. There were cuts on his arms and face, but he was alive. "Can you stand?" asked. "I am the Emperor of the Empire," said coldly. "I can do whatever I must." He tried to stand, but his legs refused to support him. He fell back down immediately, his face showing pain he tried to hide. "Your legs need treatment," said. He pulled out his medical supplies and began wrapping the Emperor's wounds. "This will help reduce the swelling, but you should not walk for at least a day." While worked, Commander Taileyes leaned against the wall. Her breathing was getting worse. The planet's air was too much for her body. "Commander," said without looking up, "go outside now. You will collapse if you stay longer." Taileyes shook her head. "My duty is to protect the Emperor." "You cannot protect anyone if you cannot breathe," replied. "I will bring him out safely. You have my word." Emperor looked at his commander, then at the human who was treating his wounds with careful hands. "Go, Taileyes. That is an order." Taileyes hesitated for a moment, then nodded and left the room slowly. Now it was just and the Emperor. "Why are you helping me?" asked suddenly. "Your kind has no reason to love the Empire. We have never treated humans with much respect." Continued wrapping the bandages. "I'm a mechanic. I fix things. Right now you need fixing." "That is not an answer." Finished with the bandages and sat back. He looked at the Emperor directly. "On Earth we have a saying. When someone is hurt, you help them first and ask questions later. Their politics, their opinions, their past actions, none of that matters in the moment. What matters is that they need help and you can give it." Emperor stared at for a long moment. A strange philosophy. "Maybe," agreed, "but it has kept us alive as a species for a very long time." He stood up and looked around the damaged room. "Now we need to deal with the bigger problem. This ship is not going to fly again without major repairs. Your life support system is failing. Your engines are destroyed. And if I am correct about those marks on the hull, someone tried very hard to kill you today." The Emperor's face became dark. "You are observant for a mechanic." "I have been fixing ships for a long time. I know the difference between an accident and an attack." Gathered his tools. "The question is, are they still looking for you, and how long before they find this place?" Was silent for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. "The Crimson Veil. A group that believes my leadership has made the empire weak. They want me dead so their chosen leader can take the throne. Then we need to fix this ship fast, said. Can you contact your fleet for rescue? Our communication systems were the first thing they destroyed. Nodded slowly. The situation was worse than he thought. They were alone with a broken ship, an injured emperor, and enemies possibly on their way. But had faced difficult problems before. That was what mechanics did. They looked at broken things and found ways to make them work again. Then we do this the hard way, he said. I will start with the life support, then the engines, one problem at a time. He reached down and helped Emperor to his feet, supporting the injured ruler with his shoulder. Lean on me, said. We need to get you somewhere safer while I work. Emperor accepted the help, though his face showed how much it cost his pride. As they moved slowly toward the exit, he spoke again. You are not what I expected from a human. Smiled slightly. Most people say that, usually after I fix something they said could not be fixed. Outside, the forest waited in silence, keeping its secrets. And somewhere beyond the trees, danger was moving closer. Days passed since first arrived at the crash site. The Imperial Guards had set up a small camp around the damaged ship. Temporary shelters stood between the tall trees, and guards watched the forest in all directions. Worked without rest. He slept only a few hours each night, then returned to his repairs. The ship was badly broken, but piece by piece, he was bringing it back to life. On the morning of the fourth day, help arrived from the settlement. Looked up from his work to see a familiar vehicle coming through the trees. A young woman stepped out, carrying bags full of supplies and parts. You look terrible, said with a small smile. When did you last eat a real meal? Was assistant. She was younger than him by almost 15 years, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had learned the repair trade from himself, and she was nearly as good as her teacher now. I ate something yesterday, replied, or maybe the day before, I cannot remember. That is what I thought, handed him a container of food. Eat, then show me what you need help with. Accepted the food gratefully. While he ate, looked at the damaged ship with wide eyes. This is not a normal vessel, she said quietly. This is Imperial class. What are you involved in? It is better if you do not know the details, he replied between bites. Just know that we need to fix this ship as fast as possible. Lives depend on it. Nodded. She did not ask more questions. That was one of the things appreciated about her. She understood that some situations required action, not discussion. Together, they returned to work, focused on the electrical systems while continued with the engines. The guards watched them with suspicious eyes, but Commander Talais had ordered them not to interfere with the humans' work. Emperor spent most of his time inside one of the temporary shelters. His legs were healing, but he still could not walk well. Had given him a crutch made from a tree branch. The Emperor had looked at it with disgust at first, but eventually accepted it. As the days passed, something unexpected began to happen. The Emperor started watching work. At first, he watched from a distance, sitting in his shelter with the door open. Then he began moving closer, using his crutch to walk to spots where he could see better. He never spoke during these times. He just watched. One night, when most of the camp was asleep, was still working on the ship's power core. The light from his tools created small shadows that danced on the metal walls. He heard the sound of the crutch behind him. You should be resting, said without turning around. Your body needs time to heal. I cannot sleep, Emperor replied. He moved closer and sat down on a piece of broken equipment. My mind is too busy. Continued working. What keeps you awake? The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different than before, softer, more tired. I have ruled the Empire for 43 years. I have commanded fleets, made treaties, and decided the fates of billions. But I have never watched someone work with their hands like you do. Finally turned to look at the Emperor. What do you mean? In the Empire, we value the mind above all. Thinking, planning, commanding, physical work is considered low, something for machines or lesser species. Shook his head slowly. But watching you these past days, I see something different. You think with your hands. You solve problems by touching them, by feeling them. It is strange to me. Wiped his hands on his cloth. On Earth, we have always believed that the hands and the mind work together. One without the other is incomplete. Perhaps that is why humans are so hard to understand, said. You do not fit into our categories. They sat in silence for a while. The forest made its night sounds around them. Somewhere in the darkness, creatures moved through the trees. Can I ask you something? Finally said. The Emperor nodded. When your ship was attacked, why did you not call for help immediately? Your fleet could have sent ships before you crashed. His face became dark. Because I did not know who I could trust. The Crimson Veil has supporters everywhere in the Empire. Some of them are in my own court. If I had called for rescue, the wrong people might have received the message. So you decided to crash on a neutral planet and hope for the best. I decided to survive first and solve other problems later. The Emperor smiled slightly. Perhaps I am more like you humans than I thought. Laughed quietly. It was the first time he had laughed in days. Commander Tail Eyes approached from the shadows. Her breathing was better now that she spent most of her time outside. Your Majesty, you should not be out here. It is not safe. Nothing is safe anymore, Tail Eyes replied, but he stood up, leaning on his crutch. Before he left, he turned back to, Tell me something, mechanic, why do you not give up? Looked at the damaged engine in front of him. Because giving up is not how we fix things. On Earth, we have a saying, if at first you do not succeed, try again, and again, and again, until either you win or you die. Humans do not know how to quit. The Emperor studied his face for a long moment. Your species frightens me sometimes, mechanic, but tonight I am glad you are here. He walked away into the darkness, his crutch making soft sounds on the ground. Appeared from behind the ship. She had heard the conversation. He is not what I expected, she said quietly. I thought emperors would be more cruel. He is still proud and difficult, replied. But there is more to him than I first thought. Most people are like that, I suppose. More complicated on the inside than they appear on the outside. He returned to his work but remained standing there. Her eyes were looking at the forest. She said slowly, I think we are being watched. Stopped and looked up. What did you see? Movement in the trees. Northwest, about 200 meters. I thought it was an animal at first, but animals do not carry lights. Felt cold fear spread through his chest. He put down his tools and moved quietly toward Commander Tail Eyes. Commander, he whispered, my assistant saw something in the forest. Lights, possibly people northwest of us. Tail Eyes' face became hard. She signaled to her guards with quick hand movements. Without making a sound, several of them spread out toward the direction had indicated. Minutes passed. The camp held its breath. Then one of the guards returned. His face was pale with fear. Commander, he reported, ships, multiple ships in low orbit. They are hiding behind the planet's moon, but our scanners just detected them. The signature matches known Crimson Veil vessels. Commander Tail Eyes closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were filled with determination. How long before they can land forces? Hours, maybe less. They must have been tracking us somehow. Felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The ship was not ready. The engines were still broken. They had no way to escape and no way to call for help. But stepped forward, her face calm. Then we have hours to prepare. Tell me exactly what you need to get those engines working. I will handle everything else. Looked at his assistant, then at the damaged ship, then at the dark forest where enemies were closing in. All right, he said. Let us get to work. We have a lot to do before dawn. The night had just become much longer. Bright flashes of energy cut through the forest, hitting trees and turning them into burning torches. The guards returned fire, their weapons lighting up the shadows with blue light. Did not stop working. His hands moved faster than ever, connecting wires and sealing broken pipes. Sparks flew around him, but he ignored them. The engine was almost ready. Almost. "They are coming from 3 directions," Commander Taylor shouted from outside the ship. "We cannot hold them all." Was beside, handing him tools as he needed them. Her face was calm despite the sounds of battle outside. "How much longer?" she asked. "The main engine will work, maybe, but the shields are completely dead. I cannot fix them in time." "Then we fly without shields." Looked at her. "That is suicide. One good hit and the ship breaks apart." "Staying here is also suicide," replied. "At least flying gives us a chance." She was right and knew it. He finished the last connection and stepped back. The engine made a low sound, then a higher one. It was working. "Go tell the commander," said. "The ship can fly. Get everyone on board." Ran out of the engine room. Could hear her shouting orders, her voice cutting through the sound of weapons fire. For someone so young, she had incredible courage. Minutes later, the guards began retreating toward the ship. They moved in organized groups, some firing while others ran. Commander Taylor was the last to board, her armor burned in several places from enemy shots. The Emperor asked. "Already inside. My guards brought him first." Taylor looked at with new respect in her eyes. "The engines, they truly work." "They work, but we have no shields. I need someone who knows this ship to fly it." Taylor shook her head. "Our pilots are dead. They died in the crash." The sound of enemy fire was getting closer. Through the ship's damaged windows, could see figures moving between the trees. Dozens of them, more than he had feared. "Then I will fly it," said. "You, a human, you do not know controls." "Controls are controls. I have fixed enough ships to know how they work." He moved toward the front of the ship. "Just tell me what the symbols mean, and I will figure out the rest." There was no time to argue. Taylor followed to the control room. It was smaller than he expected, with a single pilot seat and many screens. Most of the screens were cracked or dark, but a few still showed information. Sat in the pilot seat. The controls felt strange under his hands. Design was different from human design, more elegant but less practical. He began pressing buttons, watching what happened. "That controls vertical movement," Taylor said, pointing to one lever. "That one is speed. The red button is weapons, but they are offline." "What about the brown button?" "Emergency power redirect. Do not touch it unless we are about to die." An explosion rocked the ship. The enemies were using heavy weapons now. "We are about to die," said, "so I will remember that button." He pushed the main engine control forward. The ship shook, groaned, and then began to lift from the ground. Trees bent away from the engine's power. Dirt and leaves flew in all directions. "We are flying," Taylor whispered. There was wonder in her voice. But they were not safe yet. Through the window, saw enemy soldiers pointing weapons at the rising ship. Shots hit the hull, making terrible sounds. Without shields, every hit was dangerous. Push the speed control. The ship lurched forward, knocking everyone off balance. He did not know how to fly smoothly. He only knew how to fly fast. He called through the ship's communication system. "Can you get to the weapons room? See if anything works." Her voice came back after a moment. "The main weapons are destroyed, but there is a small defense gun that might still have power. Give me a minute." A minute was a long time when people were shooting at you. Flew the ship between the tall trees, dodging left and right. His instincts from years of driving through rough terrain were helping him now. He treated the forest like a difficult road. Behind them, smaller enemy ships were rising from the ground. They were faster than the damaged Imperial vessel. They would catch up soon. "Emperor, are you secure?" Taylor asked through her communicator. voice replied, I am secure, but this flying is making me sick. Tell the human to be more careful. The human is keeping you alive, shouted back. Be grateful. He heard what might have been a laugh from the Emperor. The ship broke through the forest and climbed toward the sky. The planet's atmosphere was thin here, and the blue above was turning to black. Space was close. But so were the enemy ships. They are gaining on us, Talais reported. 4 ships all armed. Voice came through the speakers. The defense gun is working. I can fire, but I have never used weapons before. Point and shoot, said, just like in the stories. He heard her take a deep breath. Then the ship shook as the defense gun fired. Through the rear view screen, he saw one of the enemy ships spin away, smoke coming from its side. I hit one, said. Her voice was shaking but excited. Keep hitting them. The defense gun fired again and again. Was not a trained soldier, but she was smart and quick. She hit another enemy ship, then damaged a third. But the 4th ship was still coming, and it was getting close. Brace for impact, Talais shouted. The enemy shot hit the back of the ship. The whole vessel shook violently. Alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. Engine 2 is failing, Talais reported. We are losing power. Looked at the brown button. Emergency power redirect. He had no idea what it would do, but they were out of options. He pressed it. The ship screamed. Every light went dark for a moment. Then power came back, but differently. All the remaining energy was now flowing to the one working engine. They were faster, but the ship was shaking like it would fall apart. We cannot last long like this, Talais said. We do not need long. We just need to reach space. The black of space appeared above them. Stars came into view. They had broken through the atmosphere. But the enemy ship was still following. Its weapons were charging for another shot. Then saw something wonderful. On the edge of his damaged screen, large shapes were appearing. Ships, many ships, and they were not enemies. Imperial fleet, Talais breathed. They found us. They finally found us. The enemy ship saw the fleet too. It tried to turn away, but it was too late. Imperial warships fired, and the enemy vessel disappeared in a flash of light. Let out a breath he did not know he was holding. His hands were shaking on the controls. The ship was barely flying now, held together by luck and stubbornness. We made it, said through the speakers. Her voice was tired but happy. Commander Talais was already communicating with the fleet, explaining the situation and requesting medical help for the Emperor. Everything was moving fast now. Rescue ships were coming to meet them. Leaned back in the pilot's seat and closed his eyes. He had never flown a ship before today. He hoped he would never have to fly one again. But they were alive, the Emperor was safe, the enemies were defeated. Sometimes that was enough. The Imperial rescue cruiser was the largest ship had ever been on. Its hallways were wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Its walls were covered with gold and silver decorations. Everything spoke of power and wealth. But did not care about any of that. He only wanted to sleep. After the rescue, medical teams had taken Emperor to the healing chambers. Commander Talais had gone to report to the fleet admiral, was being treated for minor injuries from the battle, and had been given a small room and told to rest. He slept for almost a full day. When he woke up, he found clean clothes waiting for him and a meal on the table. Simple food, the kind humans ate. Someone had thought about what he might need. A guard knocked on his door and told him that the Emperor wanted to see him. Put on the clean clothes, ate some food, and followed the guard through the long hallways. Emperor was sitting in a large room filled with windows. Through them, could see the stars and the distant shape of 7 below. The Emperor looked better than before. His legs were wrapped in healing bandages, but he could walk now without the crutch. Park, the Emperor said when entered. The human who repaired an imperial vessel with forest materials and determination. Bowed slightly, Your Majesty. Please sit, pointed to a chair across from him. We have much to discuss. Sat down. The chair was very comfortable, probably more expensive than everything in his repair shop combined. First, the Emperor continued, I must thank you. Without your help I would be dead. The Empire would be in chaos. A civil war might have begun. You prevented all of that. I just fixed a ship, said quietly. Anyone with the right skills could have done it. No, shook his head. Anyone else would have followed orders. You followed your conscience. When my guards told you to stay out, you came anyway. When I insulted you, you helped me anyway. When enemies attacked, you flew a ship you had never piloted before. That is not just skill. That is something more. Did not know what to say. He was not used to praise from powerful people. The Emperor stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the stars for a long moment before speaking again. I have ruled for 43 years. In that time, I have learned one important truth. The Empire survives because of people like you, not the admirals and generals, not the politicians and nobles, but the ordinary people who do extraordinary things when they are needed. He turned back to face. I want to give you a reward, name anything. Land on any planet you choose, a title of nobility, wealth beyond what you can imagine. It is yours. Thought about this. He thought about his small shop on 7. He thought about the years he had spent there, alone but peaceful. He thought about what really mattered to him. I do not want wealth or titles, he said finally. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? I want you to change how the Empire treats humans. Was silent, his purple eyes studied carefully. For too long, continued, the Empire has called humans primitive, inferior, not worthy of respect, but we have shown you what we can do. I ask that you give humans a fair chance. Let us be partners, not servants. Let us be equals, not lesser beings. The room was very quiet. Outside the windows, a ship passed by on patrol, wondered if he had asked for too much. Maybe the Emperor would be angry. Maybe he had ruined everything. Then Emperor smiled. It was a real smile full of warmth. You surprise me again, human. Most people, when offered anything they want, ask for things that help only themselves. You ask for something that helps everyone like you. He nodded slowly. Very well, I will grant your request. He pressed a button on his chair. Suddenly, the room filled with light. A holographic screen appeared, showing the faces of many. Realized this was a broadcast. The Emperor was speaking to the entire Empire. Citizens of the Empire announced. 5 days ago, enemies of the throne tried to kill me. They nearly succeeded, but I am alive today because of one person, a human mechanic named Park. Images appeared on the screen, the crashed ship, the damaged engine, working under fire while enemies attacked. Someone had recorded everything. This human saved my life when my own people could not. He asked for no reward except one thing. He asked that the Empire treat humanity with respect. The Emperor paused. And so, from this day forward, I declare humans to be protected allies of the Empire. They will have the same rights as any citizen. They will be welcome on any planet. Any act of discrimination against humans will be punished by law. Stared at the screen in shock. He had hoped for maybe a small change, a quiet improvement. This was something much bigger. The broadcast ended. The lights returned to normal. Is that enough? The Emperor asked, a hint of humor in his voice. Or did you want something more? Laughed, he could not help it. The situation was too strange, too unexpected. That is more than enough, Your Majesty. Thank you. There was a knock at the door. Commander Talais entered, followed by. They had watched the broadcast from outside. Said, her eyes wide, What did you do? I just asked a question, replied. The Emperor gave a better answer than I expected. Walked over to and bowed his head slightly. You also fought bravely. Your actions on the weapons system saved our escape. The Empire thanks you as well. Looked like she might faint. Receiving thanks from the Emperor of the Empire was not something anyone expected when they woke up in the morning. 2 months later was back on 7. His small repair shop looked the same as always. The trees dripped with morning rain. The sounds of the forest filled the air. But things had changed. Word had spread across the galaxy about what happened. The human who saved the Emperor, the mechanic who fixed the unfixable. Ships came to his shop now from many different planets. Humans and dozens of other species. Was still his assistant, though now they had 3 more workers to help with all the business. She had become famous too, the young woman who fired weapons at enemies while flying through a battle. One afternoon, a new customer arrived, a diplomat whose ship needed minor repairs. "I heard about you from the Emperor himself," the diplomat said. "He told me that if I ever needed something fixed right, I should find a human." Smiled and picked up his tools. "Bring the ship around back. I will take a look." As he walked toward the landing area, he looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, stars were shining. Empires were rising and falling. Great events were happening that would change the shape of the galaxy. But here, on this quiet planet, was Happy just being a mechanic. He fixed things. That was what he did. And apparently, that was enough to change the universe. He laughed quietly to himself and got to work. There was always something to repair.